With raw emotion and stark truth, McKenzie did not hold back. From broken economic promises to the continuing load-shedding crisis, failing infrastructure, crime, and widespread unemployment, McKenzie charged that the ANC and President Cyril Ramaphosa in particular was presiding over what he referred to as the systematic destruction of hope. This was not political mismanagement, McKenzie asserted. It was, in his own words, a conscious betrayal of the very people who had put their trust in the party that once represented freedom. The most chilling moment of his speech was perhaps when McKenzie said, "They lied to us and we believed them. For 30 years, we believed, we hoped, we waited, and now we suffer." These weren't empty words designed to garner emotion or gain political capital. To millions of South Africans, these words struck like a sledgehammer. In poverty-stricken townships where nothing changes, in gangster-ridden communities and communities stricken with drug addiction, and among young graduates who remain unemployed at home in their degrees, this was a lived experience. It rang true because it was their reality, unvarnished and unfiltered. McKenzie provided a graphic portrait of a government that has learned how to pretend using slick slogans, shiny campaigns, and grand promises to cover up a history of failure. He painted Ramaphosa's leadership as a smiling veneer on a decaying empire. The president has lost touch with the common man and has enabled the corrupt inner circles of the ANC to continue looting state resources with impunity, McKenzie said. What gets McKenzie most upset, he explained, isn't so much the failure, but the hypocrisy, a leadership elite that speaks of sacrifice and change while getting rich. One of the most discomforting portions of McKenzie's tirade concerned the idea of black economic empowerment, B. While B was initially formulated as a means to redistribute wealth and opportunities to black South Africans, McKenzie contended that it has merely enriched a worked elite, a political aristocracy, to use his term. What kind of empowerment is it, he raged, when a pseudo-child still learns under candlelight while the kids of the ANC learn abroad? For him, this wasn't a rhetorical insult. It was a condemnation of a system that's left the majority behind as a few thrive at the top. And then came the quote already being used in promos across headlines and social media, "Is this freedom or is it just new chains painted black?" These are the sorts of pointed questions that make political speeches national debates. They are the words that make folks pause from scrolling, pause from pretending, and begin to speak. McKenzie confronted the ANC's legacy head-on, asking if the Liberation Party of Nelson Mandela has transformed into a corporate syndicate disguised as a government. In his own words, the ANC has transitioned from fighting against oppression to being the oppressor of progress. While McKenzie was unequivocal in his denunciation of the ANC overall, he reserved some of his harshest invective for President Cyril Ramaphosa himself. He charged Ramaphosa with standing idly by as a dream had been destroyed. He invoked the farm scandal, the continued load-shedding debacle, and the residual wounds of state capture, all of which he described as symptoms of a president who was either too weak to lead, too affluent to care, and too compromised to act. A man who has billions but can't keep the lights on. A man who speaks of reform but walks with criminals. These piercing lines had social media lit up within minutes, with many calling it one of the most brutal political takedowns of the year. Hashtags trended, clips of the speech went viral, and the country found itself once again debating whether South Africa's leadership has reached a breaking point. McKenzie didn't merely criticize. He went deep into the 1,994 promises of housing, employment, security, and a robust economy. What he observes instead, he said, is a nation on the verge of being a failed state. We have freedom without food, rights without results, democracy without dignity. That sentence alone, observers wrote, is the title of a documentary on South Africa's post-apartheid woes. It was raw, unpleasant, and powerfully unbeatable. He denounced the ANC's constant failures in education, healthcare, and economic development, claiming the party has had 3 full decades to demonstrate its worth and has done nothing but increase inequality and divide. "We didn't vote for 30 years of speeches," McKenzie bellowed. "We voted for water, electricity, jobs, and they gave us potholes and empty stadiums." That refrain resonated in working-class neighborhoods where the essentials, stable power, secure neighborhoods, working schools, remain unattainable even after decades of promises. In the strongest part of the diatribe, McKenzie veered away from the ANC and toward the populace, to ordinary South Africans, and delivered a stern wake-up call. Stop blaming apartheid. Stop blaming the past. Blame those who had the opportunity to alter the future and let us all down. It was a provocative remark, one that goes against a well-established narrative, but it struck a chord with the number of increasingly disillusioned young South Africans who are stuck in a vortex of political manipulation and economic stagnation. He believed the era of being held over a barrel of emotional attachments is past and the era of true leadership and accountability has come. His message was stern but straightforward. Were the ANC a company years ago, they would have been closed down. "So why do we keep renewing their contract?" he quizzed, his words ringing out through the auditorium and across social media feeds. To McKenzie, ongoing fidelity to a party which has failed is not merely misguided, it's a betrayal of generations to come. Naturally, his critics have been quick to note that McKenzie himself is not controversy-free. A convicted felon-turned-politician, he has spent years rebuilding himself as a people's champion. His critics wonder if he truly has anything better to offer or if he is merely riding the wave of popular anger to gain greater publicity. Others have even called him an opportunist, implying that his strident rhetoric is simply political drama rather than a commitment to change. But whatever one thinks of McKenzie's credibility, no one can deny that his voice has emerged as a galvanizing force in South African politics. In a nation where so many people feel like they don't have a voice, he's been able to speak the unspeakable words aloud, and that in itself makes waves. His words have been the topic of argument not only among political pundits, but also around dinner tables, in minibus taxis, and in the workplace, where average South Africans are trying to make sense of his words for the future of the nation. "We have only scratched the surface of this explosive diatribe," another journalist said on a popular news radio show. "It's not a speech. It's a mirror held up to South Africa and reflecting uncomfortable realities." The very fact that one speech has been able to create such an uproar highlights just how tenuous the country's political equilibrium seems to feel at this time.